I suppose the moment for me coming out of grade 8 was early grade 9. I asked this lovely lady to date me. Valentine's Day, that's always romantic to ask on those, romantic days. It means you don't have to provide flowers on the day. So that's always a bonus. But
Don't you give her flowers when you like ask her?
no, it was 8 o'clock at night.
Oh,
So it
okay.
was
So
too
you got
late.
away with that, didn't you?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I waited till 8 o'clock at night, rang, and it was on one of those old corded phones.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of kids these days don't know how to use, but I remember pacing the floor quite regularly for
Within
that.
the limits of
Yeah, that's right.
the cord.
Of the cord. So, and you'd stretch it as far as you could before the static hit. But so started going out with this amazing woman, Andrea, her name, and 14 about around for that 14 age group, and I think that gave me a bit of structure in my life, and probably something I hadn't had a lot of at this point in time. But sports was still probably at that point in time my big focus. At this point,
How did she give you structure?
oh, how did she give me structure?
Yeah, how?
Look, she is a very strong personality. Saying that nicely. Don't want to get in trouble, but yeah. So she probably keeps me real. So she will keep me accountable. She will call me out for things, or essentially question, why did you do that, or why is it that you do that in that space. So just having that, I think, environment and that feedback really for me created a bit more structure in my life. But around the same time, a couple of other big things were happening. So at this stage, I was quite heavily involved in BMX racing. So not all the stunts and the tricks, but the actual I suppose like a motocross stadium type feel. There was jumps and bumps and everything there. And I'd been probably doing it for about 4 or 5 years. And Easter time, we were heading up to Darwin for a national event. My first time that I'd committed to do a national event. And so headed up there, and I think for me that responsibility that BMX is a single sport, and I'd played a lot of team sports, and so the accountability really came to me solely. And if I performed well, it was because I put the effort in. If I performed poorly, then again, it was my lack of effort. So I pushed myself. I trained morning, afternoons, nights, everywhere I could. I was training and went up there for my age group. And I think it was sixth actually out of my age group in that space, which was more than higher than my expectation. I came out of that on a real high, feeling really confident. I had a girlfriend now. I'd been to a national event and performed really well in that space. But June, July that year, my uncle was a paramedic, and he was on a rescue mission in the helicopter for a family that lived about probably an hour and a half, 2 hours drive out of Rockhampton, and being that distance, they had to take the helicopter out. Well, 4 o'clock that morning, or 5 o'clock that morning, my dad walks into my bedroom and says, "There's been an accident, something's happened, your uncle was involved." And I went, okay. Honestly, I rolled over and I went back to sleep. 10 minutes later, he comes and knocks on the door again and goes, "All right, we've just had an update. Your uncle was in the helicopter, it's crashed, he's passed away." So for me, that was like that. Boom, everything's just changed in that moment. 14-year-old, I not idolized, but I really looked up to my uncle. He lived halfway down the street, so I could go and visit him regularly. He was a cricket fanatic. He was, loved his sports, and very passionate in what he believed in that space. And so for me, it was just almost like a whole reset switch. And I kind of went, what does my life mean if this 32-year-old guy has been in an accident, lost his life. He had a 3-year-old son. So, the whole family just really lost focus in that space. But at the same time, we refocused. And I think that was my switch moment in my life to go, well, actually, here's a person who's made a difference through his field of work, as a father, as an uncle, in that dedication. And so I was able to, I think, sort of looked to that a little bit, and so that changed my mentality. So I strove a little bit more personally to really push, and what I'd learnt throughout that year, through Andrew's accountability at the time, my own perseverance to know actually I can be better than who I am, and I know that through my sports, but in particular through that tragic event in the family. How do I improve who I am and become a better person? So my last 3 years of high school, I believe, was a real turning point. I adapted who I was. I changed my mentality. So in classrooms, more attentive asked better questions or phrased questions better, and came down to a bit of a close call in the captaincy. Even in grade 12, I'd applied for school captain, and I got vice captain, but there was 4 or 5 votes between 2 or 3 of us in that space. And again, that was that confidence builder. But for me, it was again that reflection back to my grade 6 teacher, that she said, I could have been so much better, and I have the attitude or the mentality to be better if only I push myself in that space. So that led to to university. I did 12 months in university. I was looking at sports science. It was a real passion, again, in that sports field and how all the dynamics of a person worked and everything there. And I lasted 12 months. I went to my university dean at the time and said, is there going to be any practical work in this? And he basically went, no, it's all theory for 3 years. I said, well, I'll see you later. Andrea's dad was a refrigeration mechanic, a small business, so it was just him and sometimes an apprentice. And so I was still dating his daughter, essentially, and I don't think we were engaged at that stage, but he basically said, I'm needing an apprentice for a few months. Well, you're interested in this work? And I'd never been really a hands-on person. I'd always kind of seen myself as a sporty, but not sort of that hands-on mechanical side. So I did 3 months, I suppose, as a trial basis with him. I really loved the work. It was rewarding, not just for me, but I really felt, because we were working with a lot of other small businesses, you would hear the hearts of people when you went in, and, we worked at places like Wendy's, McDonald's, yes, there can be larger franchises, but at the same time, we worked in the corner stores, like your little IGAs or just that little corner store, and you'd hear of the hardship that they're going through. And you'd be like, okay, this job probably could take me 2 hours, but I'm going to make sure I get it done in an hour so that I'm just helping save a bit of money there. But I think on the other side of that too is understanding the business side. And so I just really found a heart in that space. It wasn't just, there was something different every day. It was from tasting ice cream to cleaning grills to running maintenance programs and, being on a roof in Rockhampton in the middle of summer where it's 38 degrees and 100% humidity and just sweat pouring off you while you're trying to sit under this swelter box of a tin shack on the roof, to then next day being in a cold room all day or a freezer that's broken down. I have one recollection, it might not be for all viewers either, of fixing a cold room at a crocodile farm. You can imagine that there's a lot of crocodiles to feed, so there's a lot of stock in this cold room that needs to be kept. And I had to walk over the top of this produce to be able to get to the unit I was repairing.
Was it at least in plastic? Or
Nope.
anything?
Nope, it was just all thrown into the cold room, and we need to get this fixed.
Crocs aren't fussy.
Crocs are not fussy.
Oh, no, but I know humans are. So
Yeah, so there was no room for a ladder, so it had to be climbing the carcasses that were in there. But, that was just the joys, and every day was something different. So I really enjoyed it. I did that for 5 years, completed my apprenticeship.
I want to know, you obviously ended up proposing to
I
your
did.
girlfriend.
I did, yes.
How did you do it?
It wasn't in the call room at the...
It wasn't in the
Clearly
cool room.
not.
It was actually, it was all over the place. I'd planned everything.
Okay.
Trying to think, I can't remember what year it was now. That's horrible.
That's okay.
2004 it was. So it was 12 months after we'd finished high
Do
school.
you remember what date it was?
28th of October off the top of my head. I could be wrong. She would correct me most
How
likely.
did it end?
But so I'd worked out the 28th of October was a Thursday. So I had lined it up. We were going, we'd had the conversations around marriage and, we talked about a 2-year marriage, 2-year proposal engagement. And so I'd worked out, well, if I propose on the 28th of October, that's a Thursday. So in 2 years' time, it's a Saturday. I'd even checked for the leap year, make sure it wasn't out. And I worked out, brilliant, this will work. She was supposed to be at work or uni. She was training to be a school teacher, in particular primary school teacher. So that was her passion in life. And so I'd gone into the house early to set a few things up and grabbed quite a few roses. Rose was kind of the flower that we had, a nice deep red. I'd started setting things up on a bed. I'd had 4 boxes, and each one obviously had within it its own little box. and I had scattered roses all over a bed, and then a path that sort of came out into the lounge room.
This is so romantic. This is just like
It's an elaborate plan.
It
was.
is the most romantic
most thought
proposal
I've put
we've
into
had
anything.
on this show that I can remember. Obviously, okay. Continue
Yeah.
talking us through what happened.
No worries. So she came home early. So I wasn't actually 100% finished.
Oh no!
But that wasn't the worst thing, to be honest. So she came home early, and that just sort of threw me out. But I'm a bit of a let it fly type person. So if
Oh,
something
okay. You didn't tell her to like wait outside or anything.
I let her go. So yeah, she came in, we proposed. So the boxes, obviously, as you took each lid off, it said, "Will you marry me?" And then the last box had the ring in it. Well, actually, it didn't have the ring in it because I had the ring, and I had remembered to get it out beforehand. And so I proposed to her.
Got
and,
down on one knee.
yeah, did the whole
did the
one
whole
knee,
thing?
and yes,
Aww.
I did that. But this is where the story gets funny. Her parents were home, so Dad was home for either morning tea or lunch, and her mum was home. So we went out and we said to them, we just got engaged, and they went, "Oh, good." The dad looks at me and he goes, "What? We just got engaged." She's like, "I don't know anything about this." And she looks at me and Andrea goes, "You didn't ask my dad?" The background story there is Andrea's dad is never serious. So I could have asked him and he would have point blank just gone, "No." Even if he agreed, he would have said no. So that's kind of how that happened. And I've probably never been able to live that one down, that I didn't ask him first. But yeah, so 2 years, well, actually it ended up being about 2 years and 3 weeks because her cousin decided to get married on the weekend that we wanted
you
to.
timed it.
You
Well.
didn't communicate this.
Well, we did maybe put in a bit of a complaint to the family, but it just fell on deaf ears.
They
So
got married anyway.
again, we were a bit more flexible and we were happy just to go, you know what, our wedding day is our wedding day and we're happy to move it. So that was 2 years down the track. So November 2006, we got married. I think we were about 20 at the time. Actually, we were both 20 at the time. Yeah, so that was just a glorious day, and we had really good weather for it, which was even better. And been happily married since.
So you're a very romantic guy then, don't you? By the sounds of it.
Yeah, look, that was probably my most romantic I've been ever in that proposal. And I'm sure my wife would probably say that was the last time I was extremely romantic. But yeah, so life, I'm just trying to think where we sort of went from there. We're married for about 3 years.
Were you in Rockhampton still?
We're still in Rockhampton.
Okay.
Yeah, married for about 3 years. Andrew had been a teacher for 3 years in that space. So it actually worked out well for her as well because she didn't want to do the whole name change as a teacher. So getting married in November, she then started work as a teacher in January the following year. So she was always able to be Mrs. Wayman. So she was pretty happy with that one. But so she did primary school teaching for 3 years in that space. I continued as an apprentice / employee for her father in that, and it was brilliant. Really enjoying life. Mid to early 2009, we found out that we were expecting our first child. So again, that was another change in life. And what does that look like? We'd bought a block of land with Andrea's parents, so a property just outside of Rockhampton. So we were kind of in that planning stage of building our own place. So there was one house on the block of land, and that was about it. And we kind of went, okay, we'll put a shed. So it was 24 acres. We'll take 4 acres in the bottom corner, and we'll put a little shed down there as a house for our family to start with while we work out the transition. Well, things changed again throughout that year. I felt a real calling to youth and kids ministry, from a refrigeration and air conditioning mechanic to children's and youth ministry. That was a bit of a weird one at the time.
That is weird. What happened in your head to make that happen?
I think it's something I've always just been passionate about, but never saw a field in. In particular, I think that's where I pushed the sporting side. I think to be a coach or a mentor sort of in that space and to be able to help train and teach. And again, I think that was a part of my light bulb moments throughout my life that, I'd really pushed more of that leadership and wanting just to help other people out and really be a part of how can I contribute back to them in that space. So
Thank you for watching this short clip of Life Bursts. You can like, subscribe, or follow for more, or head to rawcut.com.au.